The following transmission contains unencrypted instances of explicit language. Mature audiences are cleared to proceed.
Shall we begin? Let's begin.
What are the key ingredients of a good spy movie? Surveillance, deception, and secrecy. Moves, countermoves, the careful use of disinformation, and even more careful analysis of exactly how your enemy reacts, and never letting them know what you know about what they know. I'm Todd.
And I'm Dave, and we like to talk about spy movies.
Not all mafia movies are spy movies, obviously. But when the plot revolves entirely on deep cover law enforcement agents infiltrating the ranks of organized crime, what else are you going to call that? We're talking the tradecraft 2006's Best Picture winner, The Departed, in this episode of Spies Like Us. So Dave, you tell me, why is a mafia movie showing up in our spy movie podcast?
Well, at the beginning of the movie, it kind of feels like coming of age, like, you know, a typical Scorsese starting out as a kid. But probably around a third of the movie, the tradecraft really starts kicking in, because it's not just an undercover movie, you know, or not just a detective movie. It's really about two moles going after each other. And there's tons of tradecraft. The feds get involved. There's surveillance. There's like mind games. There's burying meals. There's a lot, and there's actually a lot of information that both main characters need to get the mole.
Yeah, and disinformation.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I would argue that any movie that has its plot centered around a deep cover agent infiltrating an organization, which is what, you know, a lot of movies are. Donnie Brasco was once on our list. Yeah. But you know, and we don't want to open the gate to let every movie that is about you know, FBI infiltrating the mob into our stable, but this one's pretty special because, like you say, the tradecraft is pretty rich. And especially the fact that it goes both ways. Yeah, you know,
absolutely.
Costello's got his mole in law enforcement, and law enforcement's got their. Yeah, it's a cool movie.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tell me what it was based on, or tell me that it's a 2006 film that was based on Infernal Affairs.
It's a 2006 film. Contemporary for the time, but it was based on 2002's Infernal Affairs, which is a Chinese film.
Specifically Hong Kong. Let's make that distinction.
Right. Specifically Hong Kong. We'll discuss this more in detail later, but just spoilers. It's the same movie.
It's a very, very similar movie. Yeah. We want to give Infernal Affairs like its own time. Yeah, we got some time set aside for that at the end of the episode, but we just wanted to flag it like right now. Just mention that. I was really surprised. I'm even a bit skeptical to find out that you know, I read that Scorsese didn't know that it was based on a Hong Kong movie when he first got the script, and also that he says that he refused to watch Infernal Affairs until he'd finished making The Departed.
Right. Which is kind of odd considering all of the scenes are in it. I mean, there's some few differences that are kind of plot-wise significant, but for the most part, all of the cool tradecraft and surveillance moments, like there's literally like dialogue literally ripped out. So whoever made the script clearly saw it, and maybe Scorsese is being honest when he didn't see it.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's understandable that he wouldn't want to watch it, but some of the things make me wonder. I'll just pull one out of my ass real quick. Like the death of our hero, and you have the elevator doors like trying to close on his body. That's
Yeah.
not usual. That's not usually something that is in the script. You know.
It can be, but yeah, it's generally not. So it's odd that he wouldn't have seen it.
It lands Scorsese his first and only Best Director win, which
Yep.
is a little bit of a surprise.
Yeah.
It also made me have to wonder what it was that beat Taxi Driver back in 1976. I went back and checked, and it was One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and I definitely
Well,
can't argue. Definitely can't argue with that.
yeah, but I mean, like we're going full circle with Jack Nicholson now. He's probably been waiting forever to get Jack Nicholson in one of his movies. That's what he needed. He was just needed Jack to get that Oscar.
There you go. Oh yeah, there you go. Jack Nicholson is like, hey Marty, let me show you how it's done.
Yeah.
It is not. I don't know. It kind of swung wildly for me. The Departed. I remember really liking it in the theaters and being really excited to watch it again when it came out on video. And on my first watch on video, I was strangely just felt very let down. I felt like I don't know. It just felt like it's really just kind of walked through by the numbers and nothing was all that exciting to me.
Right.
I like it much more after watching it several times with you in preparation for this podcast, but I still feel like maybe it's missing something. I can't necessarily put my finger on it of what would make it for me, you know, on the Todd scale of rewatchability, like a truly evergreen film.
Yeah. I mean, I could watch it again, but we've kind of torn it apart. I really enjoyed it, but yeah, with the Infernal Affairs watch, it kind of put a little thorn in a little for me. But I think they're both really good films.
Oh yeah. I get the feeling overall you like Infernal Affairs a bit better.
I think it's got more human moments, but I think Scorsese tightened it up to make it really Oscar worthy. There's a lot of fat that could be trimmed off, but I think a lot of that fat makes things more human.
Well, Infernal Affairs was an enormous Hong Kong hit. Of course, I mean, I didn't write down the numbers in my notes, but you know, obviously, like The Departed makes like $1 bazillion more, but that's a Hollywood movie. But in context, like Infernal Affairs was massive in Hong Kong and for mainland China audiences, and it had some the main actors in it. Even though we're not super familiar with them, like they're huge over there. This was like seeing like, well, I mean for us, well, it would be like as if you put Jack Nicholson and Leonardo DiCaprio and Matt Damon in a movie.
Yeah.
So I'll mention Scorsese, my top three like indispensable Scorsese movies would be Goodfellas at number 1, Gangs of New York for personal reasons. Maybe it's not necessarily his best, but I just really, really, really love the setting and the period aspects of that. Like,
it had a lot of atmosphere to it. Yeah.
Oh my God, it's so great to see a period of history that I felt had never been really properly mined in terms of making films about it. It felt like a period of history that was missing from our textbooks when we were in high school.
Yeah.
And of course, it's it's fun to see Martin playing around with his clear love of New York that he has.
Absolutely, yeah.
But taking it back in the day, and of course, there's Taxi Driver. Taxi Driver's always going to be there.
Absolutely, you can't leave out Taxi Driver.
I had also when I looked now again, Departed, it's best picture of 2006, it's best director, it's best adapted screenplay. I think it wins a handful of other awards with that. But I'll just throw out like 2006 films I personally liked better. Those would be Apocalypto. You ever see that one?
No, but I don't know. I get mixed feelings with Mel Gibson films.
Yeah, well, okay. Okay, but separate that. Definitely put Apocalypto on your list. It's gonna blow you. It's gonna blow you away.
Okay.
It is like a movie that stands alone in its own genre. It's
Right.
a really unique film
Uh-huh.
that you know how like just like they say like there's nothing new under the sun, and every movie is like a version of some other movie that was made before it.
Right.
Or something. Like Apocalypto is one of those movies that you look at it and you say, this is I've never seen this before.
Yeah.
And of course, a film like Apocalypto is never going to be in the running for Best Picture for a lot of reasons, no matter how good it is.
Right.
And my other favorites, I think, like kind of show my sensibilities from 2006. They're also movies that you wouldn't expect to get Oscar attention. Those would be Brick and Children of Men.
I loved Brick and Children of Men.
Yeah. What about you? Any other favorite movies of 2006? Specifically, any movies from 2006 you like better than The Departed?
I'm not sure that I like Brick better than Departed, but I definitely liked Children of Men more than Departed. But I don't know. It's hard for me to remember. Well, we had Good Shepherd, so that's for sure.
Right, because that's just one of your favorites of all time, right?
Period. Yeah. And then my favorite anime director put out Paprika, and he actually had died recently after that. We're still waiting on our last movie. Little Miss Sunshine.
Wait a second. Paprika? What's that?
That is an anime by Satoshi Kon. That's also the source material for Christopher Nolan's Inception.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's what influenced Inception. The idea of going into people's dreams. So other spy movie, we also get Casino Royale. That same
shit.
Year.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, shit. Oh, yeah. Well, I also put that above Departed.
Yeah, definitely. But Borat was that year.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I'm not hearing a lot of like super strong contenders, at least from us, from our favorite movies, to beat it for Best Picture in an Oscar kind of situation.
Right.
But this is Scorsese too, like right square in the middle of his 5-film streak of collaboration with Leonardo DiCaprio. Apparently one of the most financially successful collaborations of all time.
Oh, wow.
Their films have a total of, save the wow for this. Their films have a total of $1.3 billion in earnings.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, that's like you run your small country on that kind of
right.
cheddar.
Yeah. Definitely nothing to sneeze at.
Speaking of Leo, I wanted to flag kind of a funny thing about to me about 2006 where now I don't want to describe this as like DiCaprio is having like any kind of delayed puberty or anything like that, but he was really
What
I'm trying to say is like he really kind of kept his boyish good looks well into his 20s.
I see what you mean, yeah.
Like well into his 20s. I'm not exact. I should have checked how old he is when he does this, but this 2006, and he also has Blood Diamond this year of 2006, and my girlfriend was going nuts over Blood Diamond. And previously, up until that point, like Johnny Depp was her big like celebrity squeeze. 2006 was the year that she officially, like super officially, changed that the holder of that title to Leonardo DiCaprio, and she kept going on and on about like how like his jawline had come in, and she just kept talking about like how like I used to think he was cool or whatever, but he's a little boy, he's a little boy, he's not that attractive, and all of a sudden she was like, oh my god, now this is a man, this is a man that I want to have sexy times with.
Right. I could see that. I mean, he did kind of keep that young face for a while, between Romeo and Juliet and Basketball Diaries and Titanic and stuff. This is kind of, I guess, one of the first times you really see him as like a gritty, like kind of, man, where like that first young man type of step. And Gangs of New York, where he kind of takes over his dad, I could see what she's saying.
Right, yeah, but yeah, Gangs of New York. I still think he looks like a young guy, very very much like a young guy. And here, I think he's really stepping into his maturity as a I think starting around now, you can start fitting him into roles that wouldn't have necessarily been as suitable to him before.
Right.
Like you couldn't like the Leo DiCaprio of Titanic, for instance, couldn't have cast him in Blood Diamond. That would be ridiculous. You couldn't cast him in Departed.
Right.
Everyone would say like, who's this little fucking ant running around?
Right.
Titanic's Leo DiCaprio is definitely not tuning up some what do you call them? Some Italians from the other shore or whatever.
Uh-huh.
But moving on to I want to talk about some of the other talent here. It is worth mentioning and kind of sad. Like this is probably Nicholson's. I mean, it's probably it looks like it's his last major role, maybe forever. The guy might be retired at this point. We haven't had any Nicholson for 10 years now, not since 2010. And on IMDb, there's nothing in production. I don't hear any news.
Other than what, like Bucket List or something?
Bucket List, I saw that one, but do you really count that as a major role?
Well, it's kind of like when you get into that, actors get into that age, like with Jack Lemmon and Walter Matthau doing like Grumpy Old Men. You got to do like the older roles now, where you've kind of gotten to that period in your career. There's always these gaps, you know what I mean? You got like the young boy, or young woman, and then you get a gap, and you got kind of like, the young to middle-aged adult, and then you get a gap.
Like they say retired. There's the saying in Shakespeare, and I don't know the exact reference, but you start your career playing Romeo,
right,
and you end your career playing Lear.
Well, yeah, and that happened with Les Mis. Lea Salonga played Eponine when she was very young because she was Miss Saigon. And then when they did the big anniversary in London, Samantha Barks played Eponine and Lea Salonga played the mom, Cosette's mom or whatever. So yeah, that definitely happens all the time. Funny enough, Anne Hathaway played the mom in the movie. Sorry for the random musical trivia.
No,
we're talking about spy films. I don't know. We're talking French Revolution and Les Mis, so we're not that far off. And we're talking about Bastin, with the Departed. We're talking about like the police revolution against the mafia, I guess. Whatever. I'm drawn for straws. I can hear the crickets from here.
So yeah, but it feels weird. It feels weird seeing 10 years of no Nicholson.
Yeah.
Little piece of trivia, only Nicholson and Michael Caine are the only two actors that have been nominated for Best Actor in every decade from the 1960s to...
Well, I guess 2010.
Right. Yeah. So Michael Caine, like jump in and grab another one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nah, he's all best supporting at this point.
Yeah.
But Nicholson was heavily involved in shaping the role, and I even think I'm not even sure if the script, the adapted script from Infernal Affairs, which obviously happens in Hong Kong. I'm not even sure the original script, the script adaptation was meant to be in Boston, because I know that Jack Nicholson was heavily involved in, saying like, okay, I'm going to take this role, but I'm not going to play a cardboard cutout villain. I really want to put a
Right.
lot of work into developing this guy. And some of his ideas were what inspired the scriptwriter to go back and retune the character of Costello to be kind of based on the Whitey Bulger character from history.
Well, that's a major improvement from Infernal Affairs, because the bad guy, analogous character was a very boring character. He was definitely a cardboard cutout villain.
Right. So yeah. So good instincts on Nicholson.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he did a lot of improvisation, which, he's been friends with Marty for like 30 years, apparently. And apparently, obviously, everyone's going to respect Nicholson's choices and take his notes. And, but apparently he like rewrote a whole bunch of his own scenes and lines, which I think is really cool, for an actor. You got also, I hear like some actors don't like to work that way. I think like Meryl Streep is kind of famous for being an actor that will not touch the script. Like they just bring what is in the script to life 100% as an actor. And there was some story about like just an example story of some film, like the director was like, go ahead, like just kind of, do your thing, like have fun with it, make it your own. And she was like, what? I gotta fucking write it too?
Yeah, right.
Let's talk about this Whitey Bulger guy too, though, because I know you weren't familiar with him.
No, I wasn't. It was really interesting.
But he's a big deal in when we say mafia, we're not necessarily talking Italians, right?
Well, no, yeah. I mean, it's organized crime. Let's just call it that. Like, I don't think it had a mafia structure, but it wasn't like the mafia. Like, it wasn't like Russian or Italian or Armenian or Jewish or Irish or whatever. It was a guy who ran an organized crime ring. So I guess you could kind of say it's mafia.
Right. But he was very successful for a long time, and guess why? It's because he had a fucking mole in the FBI, I think it is, or maybe it was the Boston.
No, he was an FBI informant, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure. I forget exactly who his guy actually worked for. I think it was the FBI. And they had grown up together, as opposed to like in this movie where Whitey Bulger kind of groomed this Southie kid, the Matt Damon character, into going into the PD. These were the real Whitey Bulger and his FBI mole were two guys that had grown up together, like as kids in the same project.
Right.
And, that's really interesting too, like where like this movie, as well as like some of the other movies that I don't think we've talked about yet, but plan to address this in the case of Bulger and his guy, that was just a plain case of I've got a mole in the FBI, like we're working in tandem.
Right.
But in a lot of these cases, I feel like it kind of can grow organically, where you get, you have your informant on the other side. You start getting information from them. Okay, that's cool. That's very helpful. You're also kind of, though, in danger of getting into a feedback loop, symbiotic relationship where you're also giving them information. Because, like in good tradecraft, you always want to protect your source, right?
Right.
But at some point, you can cross this line from protecting an informant to actually aiding and abetting that informant, and at that point, you're kind of becoming almost like a kingmaker, or at least attempting to be. You're choosing, because Whitey Bulger was basically passing his guy, all the bad information about what the Italians were doing, because the Italians were Bulger's enemies, his rivals.
Right.
And, every time Bulger got in trouble, the FBI guy would let him know about it and keep his butt out of trouble.
Right.
And at this point, you're not it comes down to, at some point, it's not just them working for you, you're also working for them. And you can cross a line to where you're actually maybe working for them even more than they're working for you.
Right, and it is like kind of a king-making situation, because like in the film, Costello was handing information about Italian mob guys, and that just killed competition for him. So that made him grow bigger. It's kind of like an ecosystem, right? Like what was it when they introduced wolves into the Yellowstone? It completely changed, and the foliage grew back, and a bunch of species came back because the deers were overrunning it because there were no wolves. So they just dropped wolves in, and it completely changed the landscape and made things better. So by pulling out the wolf, I guess the competition, it helped Costello get stronger. So like you were saying, FBI is basically king-making at that point.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Final interesting tidbit about Bulger that we have to mention. When he was finally convicted, I think he was convicted of 9 murders. He was definitely considered one of the most bloodthirsty and murderous gangsters in American history. In fact, when he went into hiding, and he managed to elude pursuit for 16 years, and during that time, he spent time, I think a lot of it, as number 2 on America's Most Wanted list, right behind Osama bin Laden.
Oh, gee. Wow.
Now, I don't think he was... I think Jack tweaks it up a little farther in the movie. I'm not sure. That scene with the severed hand...
Right.
That's really unsettling. And the scene later where he's just which I fucking love that touch, where later in the movie where he's meeting Leo in the bar, and we know that he's after trying to find the rat, and he just shows up. His shirt sleeves are pulled up, and he's just covered in blood.
Just inexplicably, there's you can probably imagine. But they just don't explain. I love that. That's one of my favorite moments, actually. Where it's just okay, this is a thing he does. He just gets bloodied up.
But the fact is, in 1956, when serving his first term in federal prison, Bulger was involved in the MK Ultra program.
Oh, really?
That was the CIA program. The goal of which was to research
mind control.
Mind control.
And they slipped LSD into unsuspecting people, right? And I think the bulk of it, they were using prostitutes to slip into their customers or their patrons or whatever you call them.
Jesus.
Yeah.
And you say that's all covered in Wormwood, which
no, hey, not all of it's covered in Wormwood. There's the one story. There was a scientist, and I think he was a CIA scientist. They all went on a cabin trip and slipped some LSD in his drink, and the guy went crazy, and he became a liability, and he quote unquote jumped out of a building. But I'll leave you guys to watch the documentary to see that all unfold.
In this case, what they were doing was going into this federal penitentiary and finding 19 inmates who volunteered for reduced sentences in exchange for being test subjects, which is incredibly unethical.
Right.
And Bulger, in many ways, and they found notebooks too, like along the way. But Bulger described that whole scenario of his life as being nightmarish, and that like he never got over it, and just really like drove him insane, and he felt like just terrorized and paranoid all the time. And it's possible that I'm sure Bulger, I mean, I'm sure he was already like destined for a life of crime, but we can't say for sure, and not trying to let him off the hook, but maybe he wouldn't, maybe some of his more murderous and twisted impulses wouldn't have come to the fore if he hadn't been experimented on like that. The jury that convicted him definitely said that, like, because that evidence was not admitted in court, and afterwards several of them said that they would have not voted to convict if they had known about the experiments.
Or they would have used what's it called, an affirmative defense. That he committed the crime, but it was due to insanity or something. They probably would have voted that way.
Yeah, I don't know the details of the case, but I would definitely have, if I was his lawyer, I definitely would have gone for insanity. But there's probably a lot of reasons and a lot of lawyerly manipulation, and maybe the CIA was even involved in quashing that and making sure that that evidence was not available to be presented.
Oh, wow. Well, I mean, the damage he did probably was so severe. I guess it's kind of understandable. Hey, like, what are you doing? Like, this wasn't like a guy that slipped up once. This guy ran a whole crime ring, like, manipulated the FBI, probably murdered a bunch of people. Like, the damage is done to him as well as to other people. That's kind of a weird... I mean, neither of us are attorneys, so that's an interesting moral dilemma right there. As a judge, do you allow that evidence or not? Because that would heavily sway the jury. But you also got to think of the victims. You know what I mean?
Remember, it's a federal case, and so since it's a federal case, that means that you get a lot of that judge can be leaned on a lot by people in the United States government, by the FBI and possibly, by the CIA that wouldn't, which I'm super speculating there, but I don't want to say the CIA went in there and tampered with that shit,
right?
But it's the feds, it's the federal government. They've got reasons to keep that shit, and it's a federal judge, you know, so.
Well, and not to mention the liability. If in court that's brought up as evidence, then now you have a lawsuit against the government that they've probably already paid out of. But that Wormwood, they had to pay out the son, the family of that guy. They got a payment for that.
So, Dave, I'm having so much fun talking about Whitey Bulger with you. I really am.
Yeah.
Because I think that twist of inspiring that character, putting that Whitey Bulger twist onto the character that comes originally from the Infernal Affairs script is one of the major reasons The Departed is like so cool.
Yeah.
But we're overdue for the briefing room.
Yeah.
Before we get there, just simple, quick shout out. We're so happy that Mark Wahlberg gets
right.
He doesn't win it, but he gets a Best Supporting Actor for this film, and that just it lights a little candle in my heart. I'm so happy for Mark that he got that little bit of recognition.
Yeah, absolutely. He definitely stole the spotlight for most of that film. Hey, the story itself, the acting, the character was already...
Yeah, he owns every scene that he's in.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, he's amazing. It's great. So he definitely deserved it for that role.
And it's not that I'm a huge Marky Mark fan
Yeah.
in necessarily, but I wish him well, and he definitely deserved it because, dude, he brought everything. Like, he brought the best of himself to this role, and it was super fun to watch.
Hell yeah.
All right. All right, they're calling us.
Retinal scan complete. Validating security clearance. Clearance granted. You may now enter the briefing room.
The setup of the movie is pretty simple. We have, a guy that wanted to be a cop, but his whole family's involved in organized crime. His uncle was busted for selling guns. His mom and dad are dead. He's by himself, and his entire family is all crime related. And Matt Damon's character was met by Costello or Jack Nicholson when he was a child. So he helped him climb the ladder and keep a clean record so that he could get in as a police officer and pretty much be valedictorian of the academy and, be, sparkly clean records. And it's basically Nicholson that helps him get promoted.
There's a synergy there. It's not just that Matt Damon's given information to Costello, but also he's getting tips from Costello that are helping him advance his police career and making him look like a goddamn superstar.
Yeah, and that way he could climb the ladder really fast. And with Leo, because of his past, they instead offer him an undercover cop role.
And I think they singled him out for good reasons in that, like, because he's got I hate to say it, a good situation because it's tragic for the character, but his mom and his dad and his uncle are dead.
Right.
Like, there's nobody to check in on them with about, like, his status. But while they were alive, they were considered to be, like, trustworthy, not necessarily in the gangster lifestyle, but stand-up guys.
Well, his dad was a cop, wasn't he? But
I don't think so.
Yeah, I think either that or his grandfather or something. He had police in his family somewhere, but most of his other family were all crime related.
I know it's stated that his uncle, because this is Marky Mark when he's playing, like, super fucking tough ass on Leo, which is such a great, like, because we just literally saw Matt Damon, like, walk out. They were, like, super nice to him. Yeah. And then El Caps comes in and fucking Marky's, like, reading him the riot act and calling him a piece of shit.
Yeah, he basically demeans him and, like, shits all over him. It's an interesting approach to recruiting and undercover.
Well, it's great because you really want to see if this guy, you really want to see how this guy handles under pressure. 100%. Like, right before you even tell him there is a job to do, let's find that out.
Right.
But I brought it up because this is where I know that his uncle was, like, running guns. But later in the movie, like, El Caps asks Costello, like, did my dad ever, like, dabble in the mob stuff or whatever? And Costello says no.
And he's like, your dad would come and try and kill me, and he'd kill through a bunch of guys just to get to me. He also said the same thing about his uncle, that neither his dad or his uncle would be happy that he was sitting there with him.
Right. But not because they were goody two-shoes kind of guys, but just because they were kind of like go it alone, not gangsters, but bad guys who you still didn't want to fuck with.
Right.
And definitely like people from the neighborhood,
Yeah.
So he's got the, it's good spy points on them for identifying this guy who's got the right credentials but that can't actually be interrogated anymore because they're, say it with me, depadded. I actually didn't notice until my last check for my notes that it was Costello that left the note.
Yeah. It was signed by him, yeah.
Right. Which that's interesting, So, we know that the families, they know each other, and so that's why they trust Leo, and I think that's well handled by the movie.
Yeah, and like when Matt Damon is questioning people in the neighborhood, no one knows anything or says anything. It's kind of like a very tight neighborhood, especially bullied by the local crime.
Yeah, they definitely they got the whole even the people that aren't connected are still under the whole vow of silence.
Yeah.
What happens in the neighborhood stays in the neighborhood. Get out of here, you fucking pigs.
Yeah.
And the first, the whole first third of the movie, especially the Matt Damon stuff, when he's a kid, and God bless him for finding that kid that looks exactly the way you think that Matt Damon would have looked as a kid.
Yeah, looks exactly like him.
That first third of the movie is it very much feels, it really feels like you're just watching this is just Goodfellas again.
Yeah, right.
But in a lot of ways. And it's not until I think you're the first part where it starts to get a little spy movie-ish would be about 48 minutes in. That's the part where Fitzy gets picked up and Matt Damon poses as his lawyer.
Oh, yeah.
You want to tell us a little bit about that? I want to talk about this scene.
Yeah, he basically has the surveillance behind the two-way mirror shut off the camera. He's basically like, look, I'm not going to get anything out of him if he knows he's being recorded. So I'll just pretend to be a lawyer. So he comes in, or we'll talk about this later. But anyway, he goes in.
Affairs, right?
Yeah, Infernal Affairs. It's the exact same scene. But anyway, he basically pretends to be an attorney and basically tells him, hey, I'm one of Costello's guys. And he was able to get away with it because he convinces the surveillance team to shut the camera off so that he could talk about it. I think this was done a little bit better in Infernal Affairs, but we'll get there later. Anyway, he basically tells him, call your mother. Tell her you're not going to make it home. And that apparently is code word within the mob that they're burned. Because at that point, wherever their headquarters are set up with all their drugs and money and guns and stuff, they just torch the whole place and leave so that the police department can't get onto them.
This whole idea of the cop realizing hey, the perp doesn't know what his lawyer looks like. I'm gonna pose as the lawyer.
Right.
That's something we've seen before. The cop has this genius idea, and he's going to go in, and he's going to pretend to be the guy's lawyer, and it's super shady, obviously, but we're sitting there thinking, oh, man, this cop, he's like three-dimensional chessing this thing.
Yeah.
But this, I think, was what makes this a surprising one is that the guy going in to pretend to be the lawyer is doing it for the opposite reason. He's not going in there to fool the guy. He's going in to fool the guys that he's on the other side of the mirror.
Right. And he's trying to pass a message. So this is when the tradecraft really starts. He's basically slipping a message to this guy right under the noses of the police department.
And it is, but I'm going to quibble. I'm giving it major style points, but prying around the edges, I don't think it deserves actual legitimate plus 5 points. And I'll tell you a few reasons why. If the raid was already on its way, and Matt Damon knows that,
right?
Well, okay, he could have just called Nichols. He could have just called Costello. Okay, maybe you could say, well, maybe there's not enough time, But I don't know. Costello's can immediately call his guys.
Right.
I'm not sure you need Fitzy to make the call.
Well, no, then that really does implicate it. Yeah, you're right. I think that was just kind of thrown in there.
He comes out, he hands the phone to Brown.
Right.
He passes the phone to him and says, here, look at this. We know what number he dialed now.
Right.
Which is okay, how is that? That's not actually helping your side. It looks cool. Maybe, I don't know, where does that go too? Maybe he just knows that Frenchie's smart enough to toss that phone in a dumpster and get another. It looks great. It's a really fun scene, and it sets us up. This is our first taste of some of the super cool tradecraft that's going to come up, but I'm not actually going to give it actual plus spy points, because when I really think about it, I think like there's too many moving parts that are just set up to create a really cool looking scene than there is actual like tradecraft that you could, for instance, do in real life.
Right.
Later, we start getting to, and this movie kind of like proceeds in just a series of episodes, a series of events. Each of them kind of plays out on its own in certain ways, usually with the cops saying like, God damn it, we can't fucking get anything done here. And usually with one cop calling another cop a cocksucker and somebody getting punched in the face and getting dragged off by a bunch of other cops. Which begs the question: where is the Boston PD HR department in this movie?
Right.
Like, there's a lot of touchiness.
Yeah.
These guys.
Right.
By the time, so one of these chapters, is the whole microchip problem. Costello's got his hands on a bunch of microchips. We want to catch him red-handed with the microchips, and we can build a federal case. Blah 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 blah. By the time, they set that up a little in the story, but when they do like the raid part, I'm a little annoyed that Martin Sheen, who is El Cap's handler, has told Alec Baldwin, who's the head of the Special Investigations Unit that's trying to catch Costello, and by extension told everyone in the SIU that he has a mole in Costello's crew.
Right.
I think that's dumb. You could keep that shit to yourself. I think there's plenty of ways that you could assist the SIU with their raid without directly saying, like, my guy is on point.
Yeah.
He's feeding us direct information right now.
And you basically, shouting it out to everybody, kind of told the Costello's mole that undercover cop was in that room with everybody.
Martin Sheen is not a great spy master.
No. And I don't think he's one of the best that we've had. But another thing I wanted to point out that didn't really make my worst list, but he gets the text from Leo, and Leo only has time to text $sign. So Martin Sheen realizes, okay, the buyers are there, right? Because they had all everybody got rid of their cell phones except for Leo. What bugs me is Martin Sheen gets the text, checks his phone, and then turns around into the whole room and goes, the buyers are there. My guy's there.
And he's been in the room, and he's heard everyone say there's only one cell phone active.
Right. Yeah. And yeah. Like, break up the info a little bit. You know what I mean?
And Matt Damon definitely should have told Costello that one of the guys in your crew sent a text at this time in that operation, which he doesn't do.
No. Lots of minus spy points.
All right. Leo's got now, of course, like, everyone's pissed about this now. Oh, and also remember, like, the whole reason that that sting operation goes bad is actually because there was a spot where there were no cameras, right?
The guy who set up the cameras didn't set up any cameras in the back, and they had really bad angles. And I guess this is Matt Damon's doing or something?
No, I think the movie wants you to think that at the moment.
Right.
Because the movie's not ready yet to reveal to you that Costello has guys on the FBI side of things.
Oh, yeah.
And it's the FBI that set up the cameras. So it's really Costello's other contact, which we never get a resolution on, right?
Right.
That really protected him during this mission. But at this point, the movie doesn't want Matt Damon to know that, doesn't want us to know that. But it kind of, like, if you're just, like, filing it through, it kind of looks like Matt Damon is the one that protected Jack Costello from getting busted, but really he didn't do anything to. Well, he did say no phones.
Yeah, no phones.
Right. But, which is great. And that's, I think, the little bit of misdirection that is done by the movie. Because that's cool, and we're focused on that, and we're paying attention to the fact that Matt Damon is helping Costello, which he is. But it's not actually the critical piece of information of turn off your phones that ends up protecting them. It's the camera blind spot, which was arranged by the feds, and I assume that was, arranged by Costello's federal contact guy.
Right, and they there's a dock behind the building that they just get away with by getting in the boats and leaving.
I guess they didn't know we had a navy.
Yeah.
This is where we're turning up the heat. And this is where it really clicks into becoming a spy movie, because it's at this point we've handed the information to Matt Damon that Martin Sheen has a mole
in Costello's gang.
And we've given the information to El Caps that Costello has a mole in somewhere in the
Boston
SIU.
police.
Right.
Well, he doesn't become SIU at this point. Actually, this is when he gets promoted, or quote unquote promoted, and everybody hates him. But yeah, at this point, I think he was just a detective, or like a head detective or something. But Leo's going nuts. Well, yeah, the heat, like you were saying, the heat's really turned on. Leo's going nuts. It's like they knew everything. They knew everything going on. There's someone on the inside. And Leo basically, proposes, a barium meal like we've discussed, put out disinformation to the SIU and let it filter through and see who picks up on it. And it was a great idea. And then Marky Mark's just like, yeah, go fuck yourself. Call me when you got something. Like he treats him like dirt, like pretty much the whole movie, but is also like kind of protecting him like as his most important piece. It's made my number 2 worst that nobody listened to Leo, and our Martin Sheen are like not super master level spy master, didn't think about running a barium meal at all. And it was actually Jack Costello who considered running one.
Martin Sheen does just seem to be like sitting around waiting for El Caps to just magically like do something.
Yeah. It does kind of really show the overwhelming advantage that crime has over law enforcement. It's one thing to find something that you don't know what to look for. It's another thing when you're actively trying to do something, which is organized crime. They've already set up a network and already know how to run under the radar. And so it kind of shows that. But like, yeah, I agree. Martin Sheen and Marky Mark could have put their heads together. I don't know. They just kind of make him look like a dick. Like, yeah, go fuck yourself. I don't know. But this is my number 2 worst. We'll let it go.
Instead of doing something cool like that, like what we would suggest, they go and try to intimidate Costello for no reasons that I can think of.
No, it was silly. It was kind of like trying to put pressure on him, but it didn't really work.
Yeah, and what did you expect? All you did was like, tip your hand and let him know that the heat's on.
Yeah.
That's minus 5 points.
Yeah. But it's at this point that Leo finds out that Costello is protected by FBI because he's an informant.
Now, of course, at this point, this is just like a rumor. I mean, it's just one guy, one drug dealer or something. I don't know, low level.
Oh, yeah. We didn't really meet very much of him. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But he passes that information to Sheen.
Yeah.
And I think this is a huge amount of more minus 5 points for Sheen. Or maybe for the film, because Sheen never follows up on that at all.
There's a point later on where Sheen like, yeah, the FBI's no good. They're all blah, blah, blah. So there was only like one little line that didn't really do much. But, I mean, I think it just added more, I guess, heavy lifting for Sheen.
He does put the information in his records,
right,
for Matt Damon to find out much later in the film after Sheen dies.
Right.
But that's not the kind of information you just put in your records and put in the box and go keep on just whistling past the graveyard. do something about that.
Yeah, but what's he going to do? Call the FBI? He doesn't know who's working for who in the FBI. He probably doesn't have his own it's probably a safe play for him because he doesn't want the information out that they know the FBI is. So it kind of puts them in a really, really more in a worse situation than they were because they can't really go anywhere else and they're on their own at this point. And it's literally just Martin Sheen, Marky Mark, and Leo doing all the heavy lifting, while Costello has like this whole network of help, I guess.
Sure. And there's only so long that the movie can be, and there's only so much, stuff that, you have a lot of characters here doing a lot of things. There's only so much you can like actually show, without the story becoming like, completely incomprehensible to anybody. But I also don't want to be an apologist for the movie, and I still just want to flag bad spot points when I see them, even if I understand that the movie's got to do what it's got to do.
Yeah.
But I see what you're saying, that like, I see what you're talking about like, well, what is he supposed to do?
Right.
I just think he's supposed to do something.
Yeah, but like you can't call the FBI, unless there's like a FBI internal affairs unit, and if that's the case, then how's he going to find out about them? Like that's my point. Is who does he report it to? Because he doesn't know who's who on the FBI, and I guess he wouldn't have FBI contacts himself. I guess I don't know.
That's why you maybe run that barium meal. Take Alec Baldwin to lunch.
Yeah.
Invite Alec Baldwin to sit down with you at a park bench.
Yeah.
Tell nobody else, and again, like do the Leo play. Put something juicy down the pipe and see if it comes out on the other end.
Right.
Now, on the other side, Team Evil, while Team Good is just kind of flailing around and not really doing too great. I mean, El Caps is doing the best he can with a bad situation. I'm not blaming him for anything. But on the other side, Team Evil is working overtime. And Matt's got this great idea of, telling Costello, like, hey, look, you got a problem in your crew. I've got access to police databases. Get me some social security numbers. I'll give you your rat.
Yeah.
That's great, right?
Yeah, really good idea. And then Leo kind of gives fake information, which was a good play on his. But then he just like took off. I don't know why, but it should have been a bigger red flag. I think he gets asked about it later, and he's just kind of like, look, you've accused me 2-3 times of being untrustworthy. There's only some amount of time that I got to just be like, dude, you either trust me or you don't. I'm fucking leaving.
Right, and I thought that was a little bit of a tattered end in the story, like where, they say like, they call everyone to the bar and they say, you're not leaving. Give the information and nobody's supposed to leave. Right? Yeah. But like, what was the point of that? Like, obviously at some point they all did leave.
Uh-huh.
Like, what were they waiting for? Were they, I think at the time as an audience member, I'm sitting there thinking like, holy shit, Matt Damon's going to run these social security numbers like right fucking now.
Yeah.
and you're fucked. And that's why I'm with Leo I support his decision to like not stick around. Right. I'll deal with the fallout of disobeying orders later. But again, like you said, like should have been a much bigger red flag to them than it was. Minus spy points for them.
I mean, they know Leo's a live wire. That's why they hired him, because he just up and beat the shit out of some Italian mobsters. So I don't know. I mean, that's kind of who they hired, and it makes sense for him. But still, yeah, I think it should have been a much bigger deal.
Yeah.
But I don't understand is why everybody should have stayed there. Like,
well, that's what I'm saying. It seemed like the idea was like stay there and Matt Damon will run the numbers right now.
Right.
And then we'll find out, and then we'll shoot that fucking prick. Whatever
Yeah.
Matt Damon says, whoever
Right.
Matt Damon says to shoot
Yeah.
that guy.
Yeah.
He does but he doesn't do it in real time. He does do it later in the movie, and he comes up with this is when we find out that Leo definitely did give incorrect or missing information, because when Matt Damon does run it, he gets whatchamacallit, like person not found.
Right.
So whatever Leo gave was fake.
Right.
He also
was classified. Because in Infernal Affairs it said classified, but this
okay.
not found, it could be classified information. So that really should have triggered some really big red flags that information was not found.
When he's running the numbers, he also gets another person flagged as not found, and it's really fast, and you could miss it. But it's the white-haired guy, name of Delahunt, that also comes out as person not found.
Right.
And we will later be given strong. Now, we don't get definitive proof, in my opinion, but we will be given strong reason to believe that Delahunt is also working for the cops. That both Delahunt and Leo are people that, in that situation of go to the bar, give us your social information, gave fake information.
Yeah.
Minus spy points for Matt Damon for never informing Costello of this fact.
Right.
He has plenty of opportunity, and this was his whole plan. We gave him plus spy points for thinking of this idea. It's a great idea. He gets what was he expecting to find? When he ran the numbers, it would say police informant currently assigned to you know. Instead, he gets person not found, but that should be suspicious, hugely suspicious, and he should communicate that to Costello. He doesn't. That's why he's getting the minus spy points. Right. And if he had, you would say, well, 2 of you guys gave us bad information, and 1 of you didn't stick around. Leo, you're sleeping with the fishes tonight.
Yeah. Right.
That's my number 3 worst. That Matt Damon doesn't provide this very important piece of information to Costello. Now, as you said, though, because of because of exactly why again? Alec Baldwin now trusts Matt Damon even more.
Yeah, because I think in their golfing scene, he's basically, you have a clean record, and some people think that's suspicious, but I don't, because I have a clean record myself. That's how I got in basically Internal Affairs. That's why I'm in the SIU, because I'm a spotless guy. And you should get married, because getting married is how things work, and that makes people trust you more, and blah, blah, blah. And, it's a very climbing the corporate ladder, hey, we're going to golf, type of scene, which was also in Infernal Affairs.
Oh, yeah. Well, all the good scenes are in Infernal Affairs.
Yeah.
100%. And so now, the movie's cranked it up another notch, because now Matt Damon is being empowered even higher, given an even higher level of trust and carte blanche to do whatever he wants. And his mission is basically to find the mole, and he's the mole.
Yeah.
He laughs at, they make a joke of it when he meets with Costello in the porn theater, I got to find myself.
Yeah.
Which, of course, is the core plot of 1987's No Way Out with Kevin Costner, that we're going to do someday on this podcast. It's a very good movie.
Yeah.
Costello does have now an envelope. It's got a bunch of Social Security numbers in it. We skipped ahead a little to talk about what Matt Damon does with the envelope and with the information, but he doesn't have it yet. Leo is getting messages from Sheen to follow the envelope and ID the contact, right?
Right.
Follow the envelope, find out who he gives it to.
Right.
That's our mole, right?
Well, it was probably a good guess, because
it's a decent
if they're
guess.
asking for names and Social Security numbers, they're probably going to give it to law enforcement to run the numbers. It would be a good lead.
Sure.
They have someone that can run that information.
I think you just put like everything you got, full force cops on this.
And spot the guy. Yeah, why didn't they follow him?
I absolutely think they should have. Like,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter. Like, at this point, like, there's no percentage in subtlety, in my opinion. It doesn't matter if Costello knows that his rat is busted, as long as you get the rat. They're being overly sneaky at this point.
Right.
This is a point. This is a time for brute force, and not a time for sneakiness.
Right.
That's why I give it -5 points for Sheen again.
They could have found out where he was. They could the whole time he could have told them, "I'm at this theater. There's a guy running down the street with a yellow envelope that I crossed out citizen spelled wrong and spelled it correctly."
There should have been cops all over the street. Anybody that Sheen could trust.
Right.
Dignam should have been out there.
Yeah. Well, maybe that's why. Because they don't know who the mole is at this point, and putting out a big order like that.
Right. So yeah, I understand you could spoil the milk if you took it too far, but again, back to your thing of like always have a team.
Yeah.
I just think this is a place where they were just a little too subtle and a little too sneaky, and just I don't know, fucking just pick 4 or 5 guys, or just like I said, like you trust Dignam, right? You trust Marky Mark,
right?
Marky Mark's not gonna fucking turn on you.
Yeah, have him follow him out.
The play that Sheen is making here is basically Leo, follow Costello, and you'll find his rat.
Right.
He has this notion in mind. He gives Matt Damon that exact same advice. Follow Costello, you'll find a rat. And Matt Damon ends up turning that around in his head. You even see him when he conceives his plan of, like, there's a tiny little bit of flashback of Sheen telling him that. And that's when Matt Damon says, like, aha, if I follow you,
right.
I will find your rat.
Right.
-5 points for Sheen and plus for Matt Damon. So far, our good guys are not doing too well.
No, and this is about when Matt Damon does get promoted to find the rat, and he goes to meet with Sheen at the office, and everyone in the office is staring daggers at him because he's basically investigating all of them. And Martin Sheen tells Matt Damon, "Oh, last night my guy spotted the rat, but he got away." And I don't think that was a good idea.
It wasn't.
Yeah.
This is an old man. This is an old man trying to show that he's kind of on the job.
Right. Oh, and if he's being investigated, maybe that's what it was. He's being investigated by Internal Affairs. He has to show that he's doing a job. And, but, the way he said it, it was kind of nonchalantly, like he just gave the information away. So he doesn't, there's no reason at this point for him to suspect Matt Damon, but there's no reason for him to tell anybody outside of his circle, "Hey, by the way, last night you just gave them a time. My guy, you gave him a person, spotted the rat at this theater."
Mm-hmm.
And it's and if he tells him that information, well, I guess anyway, it doesn't matter. It was just this is gonna make my number one worst. I just think it was a bad idea to give that was a lot of information about the guy's life that you're protecting, who's in a very dangerous situation. And that basically gave Matt Damon the information he needed to find, like, street cameras. He finds them to try and spot him. He's not able to ID the guy, but still. I think I was very, very, he could have just been like, "We're getting close. My guy is doing blah, blah, blah." Yeah, but I don't know. It was just, I don't know. That information should only be privileged for the people on the inner circle with the undercover. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree. Goes back to I forget how I rated it, but just back to the microchips thing. Like, I don't think there's any reason to tell the SIU to give them that much information about what like even if you don't say who the guy is that's working for you,
Yeah.
it's just as bad to tell him like what your guy is doing.
Right. Especially
Or
at that
or where
exact
he was.
moment.
Yeah,
Yeah.
where he was at any given
My
point.
guy is here at this moment talking to the people, and he's giving me information right now as we're speaking. You know, it was. I don't know. It was a lot of. You know, what Martin Sheen did was kind of lazy, I guess.
I would call him the worst spy in the movie.
Yeah.
if we were gonna rank all the characters.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's his mistakes that make. But again, it's his mistakes or lapses of acuity that let the story proceed the way the story wants to go.
Yeah.
Costello is really really freaking out now, and starting also. I think this is where Costello starts like doing a shit ton of coke and acting even crazier than he was before.
Yeah.
Speaking of, I was really looking forward to. I looked up, because I had understood that Nicholson did a bunch of improvisation in the film, and that scene where he he has his little talk with Leo, which is creepy as fuck and terrifying. But you know how he walks away and then Frenchie's talking to El Caps,
Right.
and then Jack Nicholson's creeping up behind, putting his finger to his lips, shh, and making little cheese-eating rat faces behind El Caps. I was so looking forward to finding out that was improvised, but I couldn't find it. But that just feels like Jack Nicholson improvisation energy to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Instead, there's some stupid story about in that scene where Jack Nicholson in this case, because we're talking about the actor, and Leo are talking that the gun he pulls on Leo is a real gun. And for some reason, everyone in Hollywood is like, "Oh, tee-hee, oh, that Jack Nicholson, he's a funny guy." But I'm like, no, that's horrifying. There should not be a real gun anywhere within 10 miles of a set where you're shooting.
Well, all the Hollywood guns are real
movie.
guns. They just use blanks, don't they?
I get. Well, I don't know.
Are you saying
I
it was
don't know
loaded
that.
or something?
I don't know. Just that's the articles I found was that Leo found out later that it was a real gun, and I don't know. Gave him even more respect for Jack Nicholson as an actor. It just seems like kind of bullshit to me.
Yeah.
But in that scene, Leo does. I mean, he stands his ground pretty well. You talked before about the fact he's like, "Hey, you fucking threatened me once," and talks about, I'm not gonna. You can only push me so far, Frank.
Right.
At some point, you're gonna terrify me into the place where I will snap. But he does a really good job too of kind of also planting these ideas in Costello's head about
you don't pay really well. You got a lot of guys that are angry. You're not nice to anybody. There's plenty of guys that want your ass.
I mean, he does as best as he can here.
Yeah.
I'll give him +5 points. And he plays to Costello's ego.
Yeah.
Heavy Les the Crown.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. He's like, look, I don't want to be you or something. I think I could do your job, but I don't want to do your job. So he can only you could do your job. Heavy lies. Yeah, I love that line. Heavy lies the crown. He really does play to his ego. That was good.
Mm-hmm. But Costello's definitely not as, it's one of those cases, I don't know, who's that? Now I'm thinking of Peter Faulkner, Columbo.
Peter Falk.
Yeah, I'm going somewhere with this. Is that he constantly looks like he's has no fucking clue what he's doing, but he actually does.
Yeah.
and Costello's like that here, you know, like he runs the barium meal situation, you know, put some false information in and see if it comes out on the other side against Leo.
Right.
And that's smart. So he's thinking, he's doing his job. He's getting plus spy points for running the proper play, the proper tradecraft play for this situation.
Yeah, and which it turns up dry. So even though he does run a good play, Leo doesn't pass on the information. So I guess he might have figured out it would be a bad idea or is not helpful. I don't remember. Or does he just not have an opportunity? But it basically like clears Leo.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and give the plus 5 points also to Costello for trying it, but even more for Leo for dodging the bait. Because, again, we have established that Leo has got a proper spy's mind. Right. You know, he understands this kind of disinformation play. Right. You know, he was the first person in the movie to bring this kind of subject up. So, right. So I believe that I'm happy to think that he dodged the bait intentionally.
Yeah, absolutely.
That envelope is out there, and so that's turning up the heat on Leo. Like maybe he thinks like my life is on a timer. It's a matter of time. And we're gonna cut it here for this episode. We've set up the movie and all the characters and established that the Leo DiCaprio character is now in some serious threat of being found out. Next week, we'll start off with the clusterfuck of a rooftop meeting scene where things go from bad to worse for our hero. We'll discuss the twin climaxes of the film and still have some time to talk about Infernal Affairs before we go to ratings and reviews.
As always, the best way to make sure you don't miss out on that is to hit the subscribe button on iTunes, Google, and your favorite podcast app. Also, if you can find updates on our Facebook page or website, spieslikeus.net. And please, if you can help us out and give us some feedback by rating us and leaving comments. We're always trying to improve the show, and your thoughts would be a big help.
The preceding transmission sampled the songs Ice Cold by Audionautics, Enter the Party by Kevin MacLeod, and sound effects from freesound.org. Attributions and links are found at spieslikeus.net. Editing by Todd Hostetler.